They won't admit it publicly, but everyone watching this team right now feels the same thing deep down. The Golden State Warriors are walking a tightrope, wobbling between the identity that used to scare the entire league and the reality that today's roster simply can't match it. And before we dive into what happened in this game, the rotations that made no sense and the decisions that might define the rest of the season, take 2 seconds and subscribe to Eerie Glow. Like this video and hit the bell, because this channel is the only place where you'll get real, honest breakdowns about the Warriors without sugarcoating anything. Let's be clear from the start. After 17 games, the Warriors are 9-8. Not great, not terrible, just a painfully average team floating around the 8th seed. They're 4-8 on the road. And if we're being honest, they look exactly like a team that's 4-8 on the road, disconnected, inconsistent, and far from anything resembling a contender. And when you're this mediocre this early, it's not a slump. It's not early season rust. It's the identity forming right in front of you. And this latest game, with Steph Curry and Jimmy Butler both sidelined, revealed something the fan base has been trying not to see. This roster's flaws that coaching decisions are making worse, not better. On one side, Steph was out with ankle soreness, already worrying considering how much he's carrying the offense. On the other side, Jimmy Butler was also ruled out. So, theoretically, things should have been even. But somehow, Miami still looked more organized, more controlled, and more disciplined. That shouldn't happen. Not with no Jimmy Butler. Not with the Warriors supposedly fighting for stability. Instead, this was a night where the Warriors' depth collapsed under pressure, where role players were forced into responsibilities they weren't ready for, and where coaching decisions made the problems even louder. And nothing said louder than Steve Kerr's return to small ball lineups that had absolutely no reason to be on the floor. It's the same pattern over and over again. The team loses size, the defense collapses, and the offense fires off rush shots because nobody can get downhill pressure. Kerr is coaching like he still has prime Draymond, prime Andre Iguodala, and Kevin Durant anchoring the wings. But that's not this roster. This roster needs size. It needs stability. It needs interior presence. And yet Kerr keeps ignoring exactly that. Even when the proof is right in front of him in the form of Tracy Jackson-Davis, and more importantly, Quentin Post. Let's talk about Post, because this is getting ridiculous. Quentin Post is playing real, positive basketball whenever he's allowed to touch the court. He's productive. He's efficient. He gives the Warriors exactly what they've been missing inside: length, rim deterrence, strong positioning, and smart offensive decisions. But every time he does something good, it feels like he's punished for it. Kerr benches him after productive stretches. He reduces his minutes without explanation. He goes back to tiny, switch everything lineups that get bullied by bigger front courts. And for a young player trying to find his rhythm, try to stick in the league, this kind of treatment kills confidence. It kills development. It kills momentum. And the worst part is, the Warriors desperately need what he brings. TJD is in the same boat. When these two play, the Warriors look like a real team with structure, especially on defense. When they don't, everything collapses. But Kerr still can't commit. He treats them like emergency options instead of the stabilizers they actually are. And the starting lineup he rolled out tonight, Pods, Richard, Moody, Santos, and TJD, exposed the issue completely. There was no chemistry, no organization, no real playmaking, no rhythm. They shot poorly. They looked disjointed. And for a coach who constantly talks about trusting the system, there was no system to trust. But the biggest individual struggle came from Brandon Podziemski, who was forced into the role of primary playmaker. And that experiment simply didn't work. Pods is a smart player, but he's not a true creator. He's not a floor general. He's not a natural setup guy. And it showed. He generated almost zero creation value, couldn't control the pace, and repeatedly drove into traffic with no plan. Meanwhile, Pat Spencer, yes, Pat Spencer, came off the bench and outplayed him in every way a point guard can. 13 assists, strong reads, real control, real patience. And if your third stringer is running the offense better than your supposed guard of the future, that's a problem you can't ignore. And speaking of guards, this roster is drowning in them. Way too many. And too many of them are underperforming. Pods is struggling. Moody is inconsistent. Buddy Hield isn't giving the shooting or spacing he was brought in for. The guard room is crowded, overlapping, and in some ways, holding the team back from the structural changes they need to make. That's why the trade rumors are heating up. That's why calls for roster restructuring are growing louder. Because if the Warriors want to move forward, they can't stay overloaded in one area and empty in another. And yet, for all the flaws, for all the confusion, the defense was actually great for 3 quarters. Seriously, this wasn't a game where the Warriors were simply outplayed from start to finish. With consistent center presence, the Warriors forced Miami into jump shots throughout the middle stretch of the game. They contested well. They rebounded better. They even took the lead. But then the fourth quarter arrived, and everything fell apart. The Warriors gave up 38 points. Turnovers exploded. Possession sped up in all the worst ways. Miami attacked the gaps, pushed the ball, and took advantage of every mistake. And once Quentin Post left with a lip injury, Bam Adebayo took over the paint like he owned it. Suddenly, the Warriors were back to being small, back to being overwhelmed physically, back to making desperation plays instead of disciplined ones. It was the same collapse we've seen too many times. And all of it points back to a long-term pattern with Steve Kerr that fans are tired of talking about but can no longer ignore. The pattern of playing weak defenders while benching strong ones. The pattern of prioritizing small ball even when the roster screams for size. The pattern of trusting veterans who aren't producing while punishing young bigs who are actually helping. These decisions aren't isolated mistakes. They're habits, and they're costing the Warriors winnable games. But despite everything, despite being 9-8, despite looking average, despite the road struggles, there is still hope. And it's real hope, not blind optimism. The Warriors are 5-0 at home. Their next 5 games are all at home. And if they're going to save this season, this is the moment. The blueprint is simple. Commit to size, stop leaning on extreme small ball lineups, give consistent minutes to TJD and Quentin Post, and finally build rotation patterns that make sense. If Kerr does that, the Warriors can stabilize climb and find real rhythm. If he doesn't, this might be the season where the dynasty's echoes finally fade for good. But right now, the ball is in Kerr's hands. And this homestand will decide everything. And here's the key takeaway from the channel. Delve into financial education to enhance your quality of life. Within the financial market, explore bonds and shares, particularly focusing on real estate investment trusts, which offer the potential for passive income. Engage with this responsibly and consider reputable investment brokerages worldwide.